Okay, everybody, welcome to our final panel of the day on pro-worker AI. So first I want to say, I think this day has been a great success. Thank you to Jim and Cathleen Stone for supporting us. Thank you to all of you for coming, and thank you for participating. So pro-worker AI, what is it and how do we do it? Before we even try to answer that question, let me say, well, why do we care? In my view, and it's sometimes been said, the middle class is the ballast of the ship of state. But I would disagree with that. I would say the labor market is the ballast of the ship of state. And in fact, that's where the middle class comes from. Why is that? Because certainly in America, and I think in many democratic societies, legitimacy in the eyes of others comes from contributing to society as well as participating in the benefits. And certainly in the United States, we are very unforgiving to people who do not work, who are not currently working. We're generous towards those retirees. They have worked and retired. We respect people who work. We are extremely ungenerous to people who are not employed, of working age. And of course, we're pretty ungenerous to children as well, who have not yet worked. And so that's not a great configuration. But on the other hand, the labor market works in our favor. It provides a way for more than half of the adult population to participate gainfully in employment, to support themselves, and to contribute something of value. And so the value of labor is crucial to the functioning of the labor market, and the labor market is crucial to the functioning of democracy. And so why we need pro-worker AI is because we should be very concerned about a future where the labor market does not perform this function of income distribution, of political entitlement, and of the structure of meaning and of time, of friendship, of status, and of purpose. So, I think the reason our Shaping the Future Work Center is so focused on this question is because we believe that a well-functioning labor market is critical to a well-functioning society. And that's why pro-worker AI is so crucial to us. So I'm going to introduce three people. The first is Zana Buçinca, who's a postdoctoral researcher at the Microsoft Office of Applied Research, and she's an incoming assistant professor at MIT. I'm very excited to have her as my colleague, and she is joining both the MIT Sloan School of Management and the EECS Department, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. She earned her PhD in computer science at that other university nearby, and her research is in human AI-centric interactions that account for human cognition and amplify human values in AI-assisted tasks. So her research starts from the premise that what we don't want AI to do is tell people what to do. We want it to engage with them, to collaborate with them. How do we do that? How do we design that properly? And that is what she's working on. Her work has been recognized in IBM PhD Fellowship, a Siebel Scholarship, a Best Paper Awards at top human-computer interaction venues. She has advised many agencies, Federal Aviation Administration, the National Security Agency. She's been named a Rising Star in AI by the University of Michigan, a Rising Star in Michigan. This is all before she starts her first academic job, right? So it's going okay. And one of the 10 most inspiring women in STEM by UNDP Kosovo. So she will be our first speaker. Second will be Ethan Mollick, who's the Ralph J. Roberts Distinguished Faculty Scholar and Rowan Fellow and Associate Professor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where he co-directs the Generative AI Lab and studies the effects of artificial intelligence on work, entrepreneurship, and education. You have certainly heard of him, have heard his work. His book, Co-Intelligence, was a New York Times bestseller, a best book of the year from The Economist and the Financial Times, and a kind of how-to guide for how to use AI in your work. And that's what, he has a fabulous Substack called One Useful Thing, where he talks to you about how he is learning to use AI and how you could too. And so we're delighted to have him. Unfortunately, Meredith Whitaker, who is the president of Signal, came all the way into town and then is unwell and is not able to join us. So we found some rando in the audience, Daron Acemoglu, to take her place. And Daron needs almost no introduction, but he is, in addition to having won every award in our profession and many other professions, he's a fabulously generous and generative colleague, someone who makes all of us better through his work and his ideas. So we are fortunate to have him on the panel. So I'm now going to hand it over to Zana.
First, I want to say that I feel incredibly honored to be invited to the launch event. Oh, awesome. Okay, so I'm also excited to be sharing the perspective of a computer scientist. Essentially, I'm trained as an artificial intelligence researcher for the last 10 years, but maybe because it's relevant, because I will stop and take a few breaths during this talk, is that I'm also nurturing natural intelligence. It's inconspicuous, but yeah. So I want to make 2 points in this talk. The first is that the impact of AI on human work is not destiny, it's design. And this is very much in the ethos of the center. And the second is more a mechanism of how can we design this pro-worker AI, and that is that accounting for workers' values and cognition in AI design can complement and augment workers, and I will support this from research from my PhD work. Okay, so I study human and AI interaction specifically in the context of work, and what I mean by value-aligned human and AI interaction, there seems to be a problem. Oh, okay. So what I mean by value-aligned human and AI interaction is human and AI interactions that amplify work and workplace values. These can include skill growth, work quality, worker agency, creativity, and even work meaning. So just like industrial revolution reshaped manual labor, AI technologies are now reshaping cognitive work, fundamentally transforming how we carry out tasks. Is there like a way to fix this? Because my slides are very visual. If there's like another adapter we could use, maybe not HDMI, but something else. Okay.
So I don't think the problem is on this connection.
Okay.
I think you should proceed.
Okay. Yeah. So AI is reshaping, revolutionizing cognitive work and how we carry out. Oops. Now I think it's stuck somewhere else. Like, anyway, maybe I can just continue without slides, although that would be very interesting. But so while we expected.
So the slides are frozen? Or
not? Yeah. No, it's good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We're back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is very in line with computer science kind of setting. Okay, so the reality is, while we expected that there will be a lot of benefit from AI systems in the workplace, in reality, we see over-reliance on AI. We don't view human and AI complementarity, where we don't get the strengths of both the humans and AIs in this collaboration. And there's also the risk of de-skilling, where people lose the skills that they have for the tasks for which they use the AIs for. So my vision is more around augmenting human intelligence rather than mimicking human intelligence, which is the typical vision of artificial intelligence. So can we design AI systems that complement people in their roles, enhance productivity and work quality while amplifying the values that make work meaningful for people? So what I ask, though, thus is, how will AI assistance affect what we value about our work? Existing tools and research typically focus on the tangible outcome of human and AI interaction, such as how can AI assistance optimize decision makers' accuracy or efficiency. However, as these tools become an integral part of our work and workflow, they will affect values beyond the output that we produce with AI. They will affect the skills that we have in these tasks, our agency, task meaning, and even collaboration with others when we turn to these tools rather than our colleagues for questions. So I ask, how can AI assistance optimize decision makers' values, both output and human-centric values of work? I frame this research as an interaction problem because different from AI alignment research, which focuses on aligning AI outputs with the societal norms and values, I consider the downstream values that emerge from human interaction with AI. And let's focus first on the output-centric values of human and AI collaboration. And this is important because it's like the main metric with which we evaluate how effective the collaboration is. And while my research is inspired by clinical and high-stakes settings, the conceptual finding from these works can be applied to generative AI and other settings as well. So consider the current decision-making paradigm, or how we support decision makers in current settings is that, for example, a decision maker is presented with a decision stimulus, such as patient symptoms, and the AI provides a recommendation, which is often accompanied by an explanation, which seeks to explain why the AI made a certain decision. As explainability and interpretability researchers, we were excited because we thought we are revealing the inner workings of AI so people can override wrong AI suggestions. We were expecting that we would see this human and AI team complementarity where humans and AIs together perform better than humans alone or AIs alone. However, in reality, hundreds of empirical work shows that this is not what happens. When people make decisions assisted by AI systems, they typically perform better than humans alone, but worse than the AI alone. And one reason why this happens is that people over-rely on AI advice. They accept wrong AI suggestions even when they can make better choices on their own. In a study, we asked, but why do people over-rely on the AI? So we looked at these questions through the lens of dual process theory of cognition. And our hypothesis was that by providing an AI suggestion, we're providing a shortcut to the decision decision-making to decision makers. So essentially, they can easily, heuristically rely on the AI without exerting the effort that is needed for people to evaluate the AI suggestions and recommendations. So our hypothesis was that if we can induce people to engage more analytically with AI recommendations and explanations, then their over-reliance will decrease. But how can we push people to think more? To do that, we introduced cognitive forcing functions, which are interaction interventions, which allowed people to form an initial hypothesis before seeing the AI suggestion. So these could include, for example, people could make a choice on their own first and see the AI suggestion. They could wait for a bit, or they had to click on a button to see what the AI had to say. And our results indeed showed that cognitive forcing functions significantly reduced over-reliance compared to simple explainable AI, or this paradigm of immediately showing AI support to people in decision-making. But this came at a cost. People hated these interventions. So they did not like to be pushed to engage analytically with AI. And we still did not observe human and AI complementarity. So beyond our work, others have also introduced other interaction techniques, for example, that seek to push people to engage more analytically with AI support. These include explanations without decision recommendations, evaluative AI that instead of providing a decision, critiques your decision making, or explanations framed as questions. And growing evidence suggests that the optimal form of AI support depends on the context, depends on the individual, depends on the interaction objective. So the question becomes, how can we decide which kind of interaction technique is best for whom and when? Or stated differently, can we decide to essentially push people to engage more analytically only when it is most beneficial for them to do so? To address this question, we framed human and AI decision-making as a reinforcement learning problem, where the goal was essentially to to learn what type of interaction technique or what type of AI support to show to people given the state of human and AI dyad. Should we show them full support like an AI recommendation and explanation? Should we show them some form of partial support that pushes them to think, or no support at all, perhaps? And our state representation captured whether the AI was certain about its decision, whether the human was skilled in the task, whether they were motivated to think, and so on, while seeking to optimize the reward, in this case, human and AI decision accuracy. So we essentially allowed people to make repeated decisions, and from these decisions with different forms of AI, we learned optimal policies of providing decision support to people. And our evaluation studies showed that, indeed, policies, when people interacted with policies that were optimized for accuracy, they performed significantly better than those interacting with any other form of AI support, including simple explainable AI, which is the status quo of how we provide decision support to workers. So we also observed this human and AI complementarity, which is one of the holy grail sort of situations in human and AI interaction research. In addition, people liked interacting with these policies because they introduced friction only at times when it was most beneficial for them to engage with AI support. So moving to the other branch of this kind of diagram, can we improve the human and AI interaction? So can we improve people's skills as they interact with AI support? And why this is important is that current decision support systems can impede skill improvement, and they may even lead to de-skilling. There's like this new paper from this year that actually showed that clinicians that were presented with AI support for 3 months after the support was removed from them, they were worse than they were before receiving this AI support. Essentially, can we design the AI system in a way that not only improves decision makers' current accuracy, but also enhances their skills in the task? Our insight for a study was that AI decision support does not address human knowledge gaps because they provide unilateral explanations that explain AI's thinking without accounting for how humans would think about the same task. So essentially, the AI just lists a laundry list of reasons why it made a decision, but it does not account about what the human does not know. So to address this, people actually seek, people intuitively seek contrastive explanations that explain the delta between what the human knows and what the AI knows, rather than this long list of justifications. But how do we design these contrastive explanations? We built these human models of decision making for a certain task, where we predicted what a typical human would say for a task, and then we contrasted this with what the AI model had to say. And we showed these explanations in natural language to people via an LLM. So our results showed that contrastive explanations improved people's decision-making skills significantly more than the current way of providing unilateral explanations without sacrificing accuracy. So to sum up, I showed you that accounting for workers' values and cognition in AI design can complement and augment workers. Cognitive forcing functions were able to reduce over-reliance by compelling people to engage cognitively with AI support. We improved human and AI accuracy by compelling people to engage with AI support the most when it was the most beneficial for them to do so. And then we improved people's skills by accounting for their mental model of the task in the way that we provided support to them. So with that, I think that I've made the case that the impact of AI at work is not destiny, it's design. How we design AI systems will shape the experience and the outcomes of human work. Okay, thank you.
That was terrific.
This is always a good sign of good technology people, so thank you. So, okay, just before I get started, I was going to say, I was doing some last-second adjustments because I was originally going to try and be a bit of a foil to Meredith's conversation, who I think was coming from a very sort of AI as something that will be used as a way of inevitably of making workers' lives worse. I was going to try and argue a little bit on the positive side for some friction. Now I think I have to figure out a little way to cover both paths, which I'm going to try and do. Okay, good, all right, good. But I've made myself less positive as a result. Thank you. So I appreciate that. All right, let me know if we're live.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. Should I plug in? All right, let's find out what happens next. Okay, it looks like it detected, so that's a good sign. All right. And let me plug in sound, put a little bit of sound. Okay, that's exactly what I want to show. Okay, so thank you so much. In the most pro-worker way possible, the very first thing I did when I came here, or actually I did this on a plane over, is I went to Claude and I wrote, "Hi, I'm Ethan Mollick. I'm going to give a talk on pro-worker AI at the Stone Center. Look up my," and I misspelled Stoner the second time, sorry, to find out about the panel, and also look up my research and put together a PowerPoint of my views that's well formatted. I can present about why Gen AI can be pro-worker, cite my research a bunch. I am an academic. What I thought was interesting, right, was this is an age, like Claude, like any of the most recent AI systems in the last couple of months, are agentic. They figure out what to do. They came with a plan. I'm going to look up my emails. I'll look up his research, create a PowerPoint, cite his research. And it actually went through my Gmail and found all of the relevant Gmails back and forth between us. And it found the details and about the panel that I'm on. And it learned how to do PowerPoint, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about. And at the end of this, it gave me a presentation. And it's pretty good, I think. Let's see if I can pull it up easily. Why Gen AI can be pro-worker. And it goes through my studies and talks about, actually, these are the right numbers for my skill leveling effect. A second study I'm on, democratization of expertise, how workers can capture value, why Gen AI is pro-worker, the choice ahead. And the great thing about this is I don't have to do anything. And also because AI is cheap, I just asked to do it a second time as well. And now I can pick which of the presentations I want to go with. Roughly the same argument, but a little bit different. And again, citing my work. So one thing I want to point out is I think when we start talking about the sort of current state of AI, I worry a little bit that we are a little bit like behind the times already, right? And first of all, it's worth pointing out that there's many forms of AI, right? And your work bridges across both gaps of non-generative and generative AI using the same underlying technology. But it's worth knowing that generative AI is already here. It's already deployed. The systems are already trained. Many of the choices that we can make are already made for us. And we kind of have to live with what we've got to some degree. So we can hope for this better world of different AI than we have, but it's now a $1 trillion business with 1 billion users every week. And I think we have to kind of be ready for a world where that's already happening. So we're somewhat observers, but at the same time, I spend a lot of time talking to lots of people in the AI space, including all the people at the AI labs. And the lesson I've learned from all of this is nobody knows anything at all. Like, we're all making it up as we go along, right? They don't know the capabilities of these systems. They don't know what they're good at doing or not. No one's ever asked us to do a PowerPoint before this presentation and see how good it is, and we just figured out it's pretty solid. So that puts us in sort of a weird place, which is, I think, why it's more important ever to have these discussions, but have them urgently, and rather than retrospectively, to start talking about what we want the world to be, which I really liked about your presentation as well. So because there's a lot of work that I could cite, but because I'm an academic and because I want to make my own mistakes about my own work rather than other people's, most of what I'm citing will be work that I've been involved in. But I just want to kind of lay the groundwork here. The first piece of groundwork is that as far as we can tell, AI increases productivity and levels differences. There's a whole bunch of caveats. It doesn't do this equally for everything. It's better at some work than other work. But I've done 2 studies I just want to talk about really briefly with my colleagues at Harvard, MIT, University of Warwick, and other places about AI performance. They both use the now obsolete GPT-4, which is worth noting because everything we have evidence of is that the bigger and better your AI model is, the better the work it does is across almost every dimension that we have, with lots of caveats. But we did one study at Boston consulting group back in 2023, where we took 7% of their global workforce and randomized them into using AI or not for real AI, real consulting tasks. And then we went to Procter & Gamble and took 776 of their employees and created teams of either cross-functional teams of 2 or had them work individually. These are all pre-registered studies. They're all going through the publication process. The publications obviously lag technology by quite a bit on this stuff. But the top line result from the BCG study is that workers who used AI had an immediate 40% improvement in the quality of their performance, 26% faster, and got 12.5% more work done, which is fairly large impacts on white-collar work for a technology without any training. Actually, the orange is the trained people. The green is non-trained people. It turned out it didn't make any difference, really, whether we trained them or not. They're just using AI did the work. And this was true for every subtask, every regression, every grading technique we used. That the AI improved performance significantly. So there's now a lot of studies that show similar kinds of things, big impacts. We could talk about medicine or law or coding. But it's becoming very clear that there's large-scale individual performance improvements. The other thing we discovered that everyone has now also found is that lower performers get the biggest boost to their performance. If you're in the bottom half of the skill distribution, you have a bigger burst than if you're in the top half of the skill distribution. There's some interesting things going on there. We measured something called retainment, which is how much of the AI's answer people ultimately turned as their own answer. And for most of the consultants, the only way to screw up was to add any of their own thoughts or ideas into the AI's answer. As long as they turned in GPT-4's answer, they did great. As soon as they added their own thoughts or ideas, they did worse. On one hand, that's unnerving. On the other, you could think about consulting as a task, as a job with many tasks in it. It's very unlikely everyone's at the 99th percentile across all of those tasks, right? You're not going to be equally good at reading a financial statement and doing research and being creative and writing persuasive material and writing strategy material. So the fact that some of these things you're good at and some of these things you're bad at, and that it raises you to the 8th percentile on the things you're bad at, isn't necessarily a condemnation that workers are being replaced. As long as there are some things you're better than the 8th percentile at, which these consultants generally were. So we can talk more about this, but generally this matches what other people are finding. We're starting to find some early research that there is an independent good with AI ability that is independent of your skill. How long that lasts, we'll talk about in a second. I don't know if that's a long-term thing or not, but it's been labeled theory of mind for AI. If you understand how the AI thinks and you could delegate tasks well, you do better, independent of ability. But we're still trying to figure out whether or not this is a temporary effect because people are just pasting things into AI. There's some early evidence now that the best performers will get the largest boost in the end, but it's very unclear research at this point. So the leveling effect is very clear because the AI basically is just doing the work. It's like whenever I talk to a head of human resources at a company, and they're like, kids these days are so great with AI. They turn in these most amazing work. I'm like, the kid isn't turning in the work. That is, they're just a conduit to Claude, and Claude's doing the work, and they're just handing you someone else's work, and you're thinking it's great. And we have an ancillary study out of the BCG paper showing actually junior employees do worse with AI because they just hand in the work. And they don't know what makes good or bad work, right? It just looks good enough. So there is, I expect experts to gain more advantage, but we only have preliminary data on that. OK, so from Procter & Gamble, we found that individuals using AI perform as well as teams of 2 without AI access. And we're actually just as happy on the psychological side as people working in teams. So we got the psychological benefits of teams and the performance gains of teams. Interestingly, teams working with AI, no significant change in performance, which isn't surprising. AI is very single player, as we'll talk about. But but they did come with more breakthrough ideas. The thing to note about all of this is AI is inherently not necessarily a technical skill. And it often works more like people than working with machines. And in fact, if you're good at working with people, you seem to be better at working with AI. We have this fun study where we applied all of Cialdini's principles of influence. If you haven't read it, great social psychologist who sort of summarized a lot of ways of influencing people. It turns out you can use every principle of influence to increase the chance that the AI will violate its goal, its guardrails. So like if you are persuasive to it and you say you've just had a conversation with someone important about AI, it will be nicer to you and give you better results. So this turns out to be a very people-oriented skill, and that means almost anyone can kind of use these systems. As they get better and bigger, they become better at being able to interpret. Prompting matters less, basically. So we've also been examining every prompting technique. None of them really matter anymore. If you just tell the AI what you want and give it enough context, you're most of the way there. And workers have figured this out. Somewhere, I think the number's actually at 50%. I haven't updated. Of workers use AI at work. 33% of them report it every day. and they report on the tasks, which are about a fifth of tasks they use AI for, a three times productivity gain. And you will notice no company on the earth is reporting a 3 times productivity gain. So the most pro-AI worker aspect of AI right now is it's happening at the individual level. It's hard to systematize because it requires experts to work with the system back and forth in a way that is hard to explain and hard to communicate to other sets of people. And they are just not sharing their productivity gains because why would they? Right? There is no reason to do that. You might get fired. You might, if you know that Amazon is going to fire a lot of workers if they show productivity gains, you won't show them. You're doing 90% less work. So shirking is the main benefit of AI. Like it makes you look smarter than you are. So it's pro-worker in the most weird way possible, which is the value is being captured by workers at this point because organizations can't figure this out yet. There's a lot more. I'm going to go 1 minute over. I'm sorry. But I think a couple things to note here. One is we're just kind of getting started. So I've been tracking the GPQA Diamond, which is the Google Propensity to Answer exam. It's designed so a graduate student using Google outside their field of expertise gets around 34% right on this test if they have a half hour per question. Inside their field of expertise, between 65 and 71. I bumped up to 80% right. By the way, every benchmark of AI is terrible, but they all correlate pretty highly, so it almost doesn't matter. And what you can see is when GPT-4 came out, it cost $50 per million tokens, got below human PhD level on this guessing on this test. And now we have models that perform above human PhD level, again, on this test, and cost 99.4% less. So we're seeing this kind of trend happen with time that I think we're not paying enough attention to. So we're talking about past AI almost any time we're having a conversation about what these systems could do. A couple more things just to talk about here is I talked to lots of companies. There's no model for AI adoption. There is absolute confusion. They are showing gains. When you survey them, 75% of C-level people say they're getting ROI from AI. Only 5% say negative ROI, but they don't really have models yet. So you have everything from Walmart saying we're going to keep our workers. We're not going to fire anyone because of AI. You can believe them or not, but they seem sincere when I talk to them about this because they think they will shift the tasks people do but keep the jobs, to Amazon, which is like, yeah, we're going to fire people everywhere. And I think we don't know which of these models prevail, which is why these conversations are so important. Because I think pro-worker AI is a choice that we make, which is sort of the argument we've been hearing, not an innate property of the technology one way or another. And I was just going to end with a brief moment of if we don't pay attention to this, I think we end up with a nightmare scenario. Just to show you 2 seconds of this, sorry. I asked the AI agent to come onto a Zoom call with me and pretend to be the world's most stereotypical Zoom manager. So just a second of that. Hopefully the sound works. We'll see.
Hey, are you on mute?
No, I'm unmuted.
Oh, hey there. So glad you could join us. Just a quick heads up. Remember to keep an eye on that unmute button. It's like the ultimate Zoom faux pas, right? So do you have anything to add to the agenda today? Maybe some hot gossip from the break room?
No, I got nothing to report.
Got it. No worries at all. We all have those days, right? Sometimes it's just about keeping the wheels turning smoothly, but hey, if anything pops up while we're chatting, feel free to jump in. And speaking of jumping in, did you catch that latest update from marketing? Such a game changer. What do you think?
I'm worried about the synergy level.
Oh, I totally feel you on that. Synergy is key, right? It's like the secret sauce that keeps everything running smoothly. Maybe we could brainstorm some ideas to boost that synergy. Okay, she eventually suggests team building exercise. I'm not going to show you that. But the point I'm trying to make is I think if you think someone's at the steering wheel here, nobody really is, right? This is a technology that is coming out. No one expected to be as capable as it was. I talk to the people who run the labs on a regular basis who are actually building these models. They have no idea what real work looks like at all. They only know coding. I mean, I'm not joking. They were surprised when I told them that PowerPoint and Excel were important. We're in very early days of this, but there's no one steering the ship. And so the message I want to kind of end up with here is like, this can be the most pro or anti-worker experience in our lives, but we have to actually start articulating a vision for this, which is something we don't do as academics enough, and I think is a really important piece here, because it's not an innate feature of the technology. It's going to be how we end up using it. And everyone is desperate for positive models, and we can provide those, but we need to be moving fast to do that. So thank you.
No nets.
I've just been asked to do this in the last hour, so no slides. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be able to talk about this, but I'm very sad that Meredith is not here. I think the audience would have enjoyed her perspective. And I think I'm probably closer to Meredith. In fact, we were on a Zoom panel last week, and she agreed with me, or at least she pretended. So I'm going to think we're exactly. She's not here to deny. So I'm actually very happy to be able to talk about pro-worker AI because I've been harping on this. David, Simon, and I have written a policy brief on this 2 years ago. We're writing another one, supposedly. Yes. And I think it's very important, and that's why we have these hats that we distributed as well, the pro-worker AI hats. We definitely believe in them. But I think it's important to get the definitions, and I think I'm going to disagree a little bit with Ethan, which I think he'll enjoy. Because what is pro-worker AI, and why do we care? Part of the reason why we care about pro-worker technology is that automation, meaning substitution of machinery, capitals, algorithms for human work, has been with us for over 250 years and will continue to be with us. And it does one very specific thing. It sidelines labor. That labor can be reallocated to other tasks. But as long as automation goes on and takes tasks away from humans, humans are going to get squeezed into less and less relevant tasks at some point. So that's why we need pro-worker technology to expand what humans do. And according to this definition, it's critical that pro-worker technology expands human capabilities and increases the value of their skills and expertise. AI creates great possibilities for pro-worker horizons. J.C.R. Licklider, who was an MIT faculty as well as a pioneer in many dimensions of digital technology, including, I think, deservedly viewed by some as the grandfather of the internet because it was his designs that were the basis of the ARPANET, wrote a paper, Man-Machine Symbiosis, more than 60 years ago, and said, in not too distant future, we're going to have human brains and computers coupled like you haven't seen before, expanding what either computers can do and what or humans can do. So it's really, you have to expand on both dimensions, except that his very prophetic views were way ahead of their time in 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010s. And I think with generative AI, they may become a possibility. But may, meaning that it's not necessarily something that's going to happen by itself. I think I'm very bullish that pro-worker AI is possible, but it's very different from an even more optimistic viewpoint, which is that pro-worker AI will happen by itself. And the reason why I think it won't happen by itself, and in fact we're not going in that direction, is twofold. One is that I think the excellent examples that Ethan gave are not pro-worker AI, because what they really are in most cases, and I think both Zana's and Ethan's examples say that very clearly, they are really automation of some subtasks. Humans are not becoming more capable. It's really that in some well-defined tasks that office workers can perform or management consultants can perform, Claude or GPT-5 is better, and if they just give the AI answer, they're going to do OK. But it's not really expanding what humans do. So if it's adopted mass scale, it's going to sideline humans. That's not what pro-worker AI is. Pro-worker AI really requires an effort to make certain occupations much more productive using human labor, like, for example, electricians. If you give them tools so that electricians can identify problems much better, see the troubleshooting needs or the difficult edge cases much better with an AI tool, that's pro-worker AI. Or if we make blue-collar workers or plumbers or nurses or educators more productive. So that's not going to happen by itself. It's not going to happen by itself because I think it requires a different design, much more domain-specific knowledge, overcoming the problems that Zana very clearly articulated, which is that it's not only that you're going to get the answers, but you also need to learn how to learn from AI so that you can expand your capabilities. The other reason why I think it's not going to happen by itself is because there are actually some technical difficulties. It's not as easy because it requires a lot of reliability. You require a lot of domain-specific knowledge. For example, the pro-electrician tool that I am hinting at won't happen unless you have a lot of domain-specific data from the best electricians in the world that shows how you can deal with those edge cases. So it requires an effort. And I think my assessment, and here we can disagree, is that the business models of tech companies is not really aligned with that pro-worker dimension. But though the tech companies are quite dominant right now, the incumbent tech companies, and they have their own business models. Hats off to that. Everybody should come with their business models. But then the question is, are those business models and the competitive environment really conducive to this new horizon being realized? And I don't think so. I think the business models of most tech companies is either based on making money from digital advertising, personalized data, or selling software to companies for automation. So that requires something else. And I think there's also an ideological barrier. And the ideological barrier is that, J.C.R. Licklider, another MIT grandee, Norbert Wiener, or Douglas Engelbart, who invented menu-driven computers, hyperlinks, hypertext, the computer mouse, those kinds of people notwithstanding, the center of gravity of computer science and AI has shifted to the dimension of artificial general intelligence. And artificial general intelligence is consistent with the kind of evidence that Ethan was showing. And I think it is the enemy of pro-worker AI, because AGI, artificial general intelligence, is going to push us towards more and more. Well, let the models do more and more of these high-level human capabilities. Once that comes, implicitly or explicitly, we're going to be in the realm of automation. So we really need a concerted effort to start this pro-worker dimension. And it has to come from competitive pressure. It has to come probably from some regulation. And by regulation, I don't mean the defensive regulation, but more like proactive regulation of society, the democratic process, civil society, saying, what is it that we want from AI? How can we get there? But I think it's not hopeless. And the reason why I don't think it's hopeless is because, indeed, some of the advances are very promising. Whether foundation models as they are will be an input or not, but it is clear that there is a lot of possibilities for advancement. And I think we can start with the one very important achievement. I think there is the possibility of making the case that pro-worker AI is both feasible, and the examples, I didn't go into the details, but we do in our work with David and Simon in much greater detail. But those examples show that it's feasible. And I think you can easily make the case that it's socially desirable. And I think I'm going to end there. But it's socially desirable, I think, in two very important senses. The first one, I think, is uncontroversial. I think inequality is a big strain on society, and that's why we are a Stone Center. We really think about inequality. And it's a big strain on democracy. And automation typically fuels inequality, whereas pro-worker technologies have the capacity to limit inequality because you're making workers more productive, and therefore the increased labor demand can actually lead to higher wages so long as the labor market is sufficiently competitive. But I think there's another sense in which this is socially desirable. While AGI dreams are there, I think the track record of getting big productivity gains from automation hasn't been very impressive. The past is no perfect guide to the future, but I think the same difficulties that automation actually turns out to be harder, integrating into organizations, into businesses turns out to be challenging. And even if you do that, the 30% looks very impressive, but 30% productivity gain in even 10% of the tasks, that's not going to be a huge productivity gain. Whereas if with pro-worker AI, you're actually making the main human resource of companies, their human workers, more valuable. And that has great potential for productivity boost, especially during turbulent periods, which was our motivation at the beginning. You need new products and services. You need new technologies, new tasks. I think pro-worker AI is an ideal companion to that. So I think there is a lot of hope, but hope is not the same as optimism. Thank you.
Okay, so that was terrific. So I'm going to ask a brief question to each of you, but first I will steal airtime to make a speech. Let me emphasize the point about automation versus what else. the most fundamentally transformative technologies are not automation technologies. Automation means better, cheaper, faster of what you're already doing. What makes a technology transformative is it enables new capabilities, right? Learning to fly, mechanical flight was not automation. We didn't fly before we had it, right? Getting a person to the moon was not automation, right? And with new capabilities usually comes new human expertise. And so I think one version of pro-worker AI is AI that enables people to use use their expertise more effectively and gain it more efficiently. And I think that's what Zana's research is about. But now let me ask a somewhat skeptical question. So I was kind of dismayed by how many cases people did, the AI was better than the person and better than the person with AI, and how hard you had to work to flip that result. So, I think a lot of firms will say, well, let's just cut out the middleman and go straight to AI. What do you how much potential do you see here, right? Do you think there's like a great unlock ahead where we can, really add value, or is it just it's like, yeah, we get a little bit out of this, but people are expensive, machines are getting cheaper, let's cut out the middleman?
That's a very good question. Like one answer, like short answer to this is, would you be okay with automatically being diagnosed rather than a doctor seeing your diagnosis? Some people say, oh, maybe in a few years, yes, maybe, I would be open to that. But in terms of research, I think that what Daron was saying, that we were automating like one subtask of the overall task, or in this case, like the very task that the human was doing, so that we're showing the same kind of diagnosis to the doctor as well, and allowing them to make that inference of whether the AI is right or wrong. This is not necessarily the best approach to complement humans. Maybe the way that we should be doing that is to elicit some additional signal that is impossible from the human to perceive, and that it's not very easy to do because all of the AI that we have typically depends on labels, and those labels are given by experts. So for example, doctors label multiple patients, and from that we train AI systems, and it's expected for an AI that was trained from a corpus, from a big corpus of doctor labels to perform, the AI itself is a statistical model, so it's essentially better than, it's averaging the doctors at least. So you have like this gap always between like an average human and then an average model. That said, the labels that we have and the metrics that we have also may not capture the actual the constructs that we want in the ground truth. For example, a lot of time in child welfare decisions, people have, there's like this whole case in Allegheny County where there was an algorithmic scoring system that was determining whether a child will be needing to be placed in a foster home or not. And the risks that the algorithm was considering was very different from the workers, how they made those decisions. So there was like this clash between the algorithm's construct of what needs to be done versus like the workers. So it's not always easy to imbue these higher level constructs that we care about in the real world into algorithms. That's why I don't think that it's always a fair comparison to show that graph, because that is rarely the case where the task is so well defined that you can measure human and AI.
And actually, I think, one point that you're making, which I think Daron is making as well, is that automation is actually really hard, right? To fully automate something basically says, hey, no expertise required anymore, we got this, the machine will do it. And automation of a subset of tasks is usually not the same as the entire agency of all the cascading decisions that need to be made to prioritize and weigh evidence. And I think so often a task level comparison is not really informative about the potential of automating the job. So Ethan, question for you. So, you've probably seen the movie The Incredibles, right? And you remember the character Panic, the anti-superhero, who always says, he hated the specials. The superheroes were called the specials, and he would say, and he would develop all these, kind of synthetic capabilities to give himself power. And he'd say, because when everyone is special, no one is special. And it's a little bit the same when my reaction to you using Claude, which is I could have used Claude to make your presentation as well. But if everyone is expert, no one is expert, right? It's all of a sudden there's no scarcity. So I had two minds about this. One was, hey, this is just this is a parlor trick, right? I just go to Claude, I say I'm Ethan Mollick, cite my papers and read my emails and give the talk. But then I thought, actually, no, you're adding a lot of value relative to what Claude is doing, right? Claude saved you some time in preparing the prompts, but most of that was you speaking. So how do you think about this? Is it just I sit and shirk, I get to do my thing, and I just sit in my desk and look busy? Or is there a complementarity between what it's producing and what you have built in?
Yeah, and my much worse presentation was 100% human-made, right? The one I was showing by AI. So you can make your decision about that. I mean, two things I think that are worth noting about this. One is, right now, I think we're actually in a golden age of augmentation for experts, at least, right? Like where AI is right now, it makes enough mistakes, it's at the task level. There's a really great study out of OpenAI of all places called GDP-Val, which if you haven't read, it's worth reading, where they basically found a model of working where you assign a task to the AI, and if it doesn't do a good job, you try a couple n number of times, and then you do it yourself. And if you pick the right n, you get even for tasks that you fail at, you end up with an overall productivity improvement because your value is really high. Or another example is when Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, spoke 7 months ago and said within 6 months, 90% of code will be written by AI. And everyone laughed a month ago because that absolutely wasn't true. Although if you talk to the best coders now, 1 month later with the new tools that just came out in the last 2 months, they say 90% of their code is written by AI, but the 10% of code they're writing is the most interesting, important code, and they have high value. So right now, the models are at the exact place where augmentation, it really does matter. My expertise matters. Like I know how to, whether it's a good presentation or not. I'll ask for different versions of it. I won't use the exact presentation, but I would probably gotten ideas from it. Like we're at a moment of real augmentation, but I think the thing I'm less skeptical about than you, I'm still skeptical, but less skeptical than you, is that I think that we are seeing a more eclipsing of more superhuman ability from these systems at points than not, which is not the same thing as replacing every task out there. But I think that there's a skepticism that isn't borne out by recent history that this is going to stop sometime very soon. So I think right now we're absolutely in a place where AI replacing an expert job, very hard to do, right? And we have a lot of need for human-computer interaction to think about how we make this happen. And there's huge questions about how we train junior people because the AI is better than new recruits or new novice people. Huge issue, right? There's a lot, but if we froze right here, I think we have a good sense of the sets of problems and tasks. It matches historical models very well. I think there's reason to be skeptical about large-scale gain in the short term because all the adoption curves have to happen and all of the complementarities need to be in place. I will say this is not where the AI companies think things are going to stop. They haven't been wrong yet. That doesn't mean they're going to be wrong, that they're not going to be wrong very soon. I know enough stuff coming out of the labs to say we've got another 6 months of juice at least, and that's only because I see what's happening in the next 6 months. I think that to me is the biggest concern I have. It's not that we're not in a place where right now I think pro-worker AI is very possible because it is really hard to automate. I think in 10 years, even if we stop with technology today, we'd have lots of automation because the systems are capable of doing things. But that's the concern. I wish that I'm more worried about that, I think, than you guys are. That whether we reach true AGI or not, that this is in the target zone and that the models are catching up much more quickly than I expected them to be. And that makes me more nervous about the future of what work looks like than I think is being expressed elsewhere.
Got it. Okay, great. So Daron, I was going to ask you to sort of a skeptical question about the notion that there will be pro-worker, that actually it's going to be experts will only benefit in the long run. But I think that's what Ethan just said. So I'm going to let you respond and make the case that actually pro-worker AI is not just an academic fantasy, but actually there's a future in that it's not just a temporary transition between oblivion.
Well, I mean, I think Ethan's point is right along our current path. So what I am, again, emphasizing that there's a choice, that there's a different path that would do different things. And I think the best way to start is actually exactly where you did start, David, in your speech. Automation is not the thing that often is transformative. Let me put that even more starkly, cost cutting. So, I don't know, there are some very informed people here, but I don't think many people in this audience would have heard of the Stanley Motor and Carriage Company, which started 8 years before Ford, and was very good at reducing costs for steam-powered cars. But we all know Ford Motor Company because they did something different. They completely changed the industry by creating new products that nobody thought about. Henry Ford himself said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So that kind of perspective is where human ingenuity and technology meet. And that's what pro-worker AI can do. But that's at the high level. That's already for experts. But I think if we try it, every occupation has expertise in it. I don't think, even with the best tool, I can be a very good electrician or a plumber. So electricians and plumbers have expertise that is going to be very, very difficult, even with advances in robotics, to overcome. Nurses, educators have that. So the question is, can we then develop the AI tools that is going to really amplify those capabilities, enable them to do more sophisticated tasks, new tasks? And I think definitely, because there are, even with the crumbs of investment going into those things, there are examples. So Schneider Electric is developing a field electrician tool that does exactly that, and they're spending very little money in it. I think the most exciting thing in finance is not coming from OpenAI or Anthropic or any of those, but it's coming from Stripe, because they're using their own data to solve a specific problem, which is about security challenges. So these domain-specific models that specifically try to deal with human problems, I think, are quite possible and feasible, and I think, but they're not going to happen by themselves. That's
okay, we're almost out of time, but I want to take like 1 or 2 questions. So if you have a question, please stand up. Tom Koken, please come forward and go ahead. We're going to take 2 or 3 questions, and then our panelists will each have a minute to respond.
A quick but hopefully provocative question. I believe that the way to get human-centered, worker-centered AI is to get workers to have a voice, not just when it's given to them, but in the early stage design and the development phase. And I don't see that happening. And I guess my question is, do you agree or disagree with that point? And if so, if you agree, how do we get workers with enough power to have a voice in the early stage decisions about how you design and develop these tools so that they can ensure that their voice and their interests are reflected in the way it plays out at the workplace?
Great. Thank you. Next question, and just please say your name and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Miles, and clearly AI can be pro-worker AI, right, and can be designed better, but market incentives seem to push towards automation. So given weak regulation and collapsing public research funding, what other mechanisms do we have to actually redirect AI development to augmentation? And the second part of this question is, are we actually equipped to transition into this augmentation focused innovation? Because, for example, if a lot of people are like drivers and now there's a lot of Waymos, how do we upskill them then? Are we ready for that?
Great. Thank you.
Hey there, my name is Devesh. I'm a first-year PhD student here. So these technologies, GPTs, I see them as fairly general purpose. There are certain things that they can do that genuinely unlock things that humans could not do before, like new drug discovery. And there are things that we could already do that we're just getting a little bit faster at, right? And in some ways, I think this distinction is actually a bit arbitrary. Like, air travel is a new thing, but it's also just getting from New York to London faster than you could when you had access to a boat. And so the question is there really much that we can do to actually influence the development of these general purpose models? Like, is there actually an intervention that makes AI better at pro-worker things versus non-pro-worker things? Or is this really a question about increasing the amount of subsidy that goes to areas of human activity where people will continue to retain a comparative edge, like labor-absorbing services in education and healthcare, where then we're talking more about redistributive and subsidy policy, not about the development of AI?
Great. Last 2 questions.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Przegalińska. I'm from that other university nearby, Harvard, Center for Labor and Just Economy. My question is about division of labor, I guess, and agency. I understand that pro-worker AI can be about productivity and also about pay. We do discuss collective bargaining, for instance, in the context of pro-worker AI, but I'm kind of interested, in the term of using artificial intelligence today. We hear quite often that it's a technology that's very conducive to delegating tasks to it. Okay, so then people do nothing, AI does everything. Are there any other strategies and maybe a design that would be helpful? Could we zoom in and kind of check how this distribution of labor looks like and also how it pertains to agency. I think it's very, very interesting. We did one experiment where we had an AI that would decline supporting humans. I know it's very radical, but actually it was very interesting to track the strategies of humans and how they were coping with the fact that AI is not helping out on the task. Maybe can give you just an overview or advice, but is not helping. So yeah, I'm kind of curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Non-sycophantic AI.
Not to overwhelm you, but I'm Alice, PhD student at MIT Sloan, and I'm just curious about what kinds of welfare and unemployment and active labor market policies you might recommend for this pro-worker AI vision. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dee. I'm an educator here. One of the questions I'm seeing is we're seeing senior leaders, senior experts being valued more in today's labor market to provide the expertise in designing the AI systems. And we're seeing students transitioning out of college being facing challenge in getting jobs. So I'm curious, how do we take that into consideration as we're designing the pro-worker AI? How do we support the more junior students in adapting to their career? Thank you.
Thank you. So you can see there's this enormous amount. This is such an important topic, right? We've had more questions now than all day, and it just suggests why this is so central, and this is so central to what we do. So let me give each of our panelists 1 minute to close.
Answer all the questions.
Yeah, you can answer all, or you could use one sentence to answer them all, or you could just say what you want to say. Go ahead, Zana.
Yeah, I'm going to address Thomas Cohen's question because I think I wish Meredith was here, and so I'm channeling a little bit her in this panel. His question was around worker voices and how can we integrate those voices from the design to development and so on. I can't answer about power, but we are writing at Microsoft this white paper around previous approaches towards participatory design for technology and how those can be used for including worker voices in AI design, and whether we can come up essentially with approaches in both organizations, but also in like these large tech companies that are deploying these technologies around like how can we ask people from different industries to voice their values in the design of this technology. I'll end at that, but essentially we have precedents from previous technologies and other ways, participatory ways of designing technology.
Terrific.
I mean, I think these are great, these are incredible questions. I want to keep emphasizing how much, it's ironically, these look like two onrushing cars heading towards me, these bright lights, because I want to emphasize how much we don't know about what's happened. Like, the labs are building these models, and they tend to be really good at lots of things nobody expected. We don't have a good underlying theory about why a next token prediction systems is good, or why even adding in a reasoning model, which is also a next token prediction system on top, lets it do math much better than we thought it would. We are faced with a whole host of mysteries. And you're kind of, and I mean, when I talked to my social psychologist friends 2 years ago, we were like, well, at least AI will never be as creative as people. But it turns out it's more creative than almost anybody else, right? At least it won't show empathy, except people prefer talking to the AI than doctors in controlled experiments. That doesn't mean it replaces people, but you should recognize that that is the goal of these labs, 100%, is to replace people at everything. That's what they want to do. They think they can do it. You do not have to believe them, but they're absolutely convinced that they can do this in the very near term. I think it's reasonable to say that will take longer than people think, but that longer isn't more comforting in a lot of ways. And I think that all the conversations we want to have about how do we engage workers more in the creation of this process, it's just not happening. Like, the labs are going ahead and building models. There's enough money at stake that they're free. The machine keeps moving forward. And I think we need to think about the other interfaces we have to addressing this, how it's being used in companies, legislative and policy-making decisions, societal level decisions, because I don't think we're going to influence the technology. It may reach a dead end, right? It may run off the tracks. LLMs may not be the key to the future. It's completely fine. But there's enough money now that people are finding ways around the kind of breaks that they were finding before. So I just think we have to be realistic about where things are and bet on scenarios. There's a scenario where nothing changes very much. We stop where we are. But I think people are not realizing how far things have already gone. and how good these systems already are, and what that means about the logic of these things over the next 5 or 10 years. And interventions are more important than ever, but we need to be making them kind of urgently rather than just discussing them, I think.
Bring it home, Daron.
Okay, 30 seconds on 2 questions. First on Tom's question. Yes, I think labor has something very important, tacit knowledge. I think workers understand work better than anybody else. But the problem is, I think the labor movement has to change before it can have that impact. It has to be much more technology savvy, and it also has to give up the pretense that they can just fight against automation by saying no to automation, because when there are so many automation tools, management has a lot of power. So labor organizations have to come to the table with an attitude that we have to steer technology in a more pro-worker direction that's beneficial to firms, because otherwise you're in trouble. And then in terms of the question of, what is it that we can do? I think policy, exactly like Ethan said, but I think one question is whether the current architecture of the models is actually appropriate for pro-worker AI. We don't know the answer to that. It would be actually pretty remarkable if it turned out to be, because they were designed for something completely different. So why would you think that this is the right architecture? And all of the money is going into that architecture, so creating other architectures, much more domain-specific, reliable knowledge, may be something that we need to invest in, and where public investment is going to become very important. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so clearly we have our work cut out for us. So we thank the Stones for supporting our work. We thank MIT. We thank all of you. I thought this has been a fascinating panel, so thank you guys so much for contributing.